Oh, what's going on there, Prepperines? So today, a burning topic. Will I get drafted? Well, just like the dramatic shift from my beautiful full beard to this impeccable mustache, we're going to be taking a sleek and tailored look at the enigma of the military draft. So, pop us in, pull her up, and let's dig in.
To me like this. He said, most of the world out there is sheep. They're kind, gentle creatures. They can only hurt one another by accident. He says, then there are wolves. The wolves will feed on the sheep. They're the sociopaths. They're the criminals. He says, and then there are sheepdogs. The sheep are a little leery of the sheepdog. He wanders around, checks the perimeter every night, barks at the moon. He would never turn his teeth on the flock, but he yearns for a righteous battle. And when the wolf comes around, nothing else will do, and the entire flock is sitting there trying to hide behind one lonely sheepdog as he faces down the wolves. We're talking about a creature who is capable of confronting and dealing with combat and sustaining themselves across the long haul. The goal becomes to be a sheepdog, to be a warrior, to be the one that is ready to respond to the threats when the time arises.
All right, you guys. So let's be honest. They're not going to draft me. I mean, the dashing resemblance between either Tom Selleck or Rooster from Top Gun would be just far too distracting on the battlefield. Pretty much the opposite of camouflage. Am I correct? Anyways, trying to add as much comedy and humor to this thing as I can. But this is actually a serious topic. And I am a small YouTube channel. You know, we got roughly 250 subscribers here. But, you know, it's not the size of the boat. It's the motion of the ocean. At least that's what my wife tells me. And what I'm trying to do here is actually cover head to toe, you know, the whole draft. Some of us are, 18 to 26 within those draft related years. And some of us are actually concerned fathers and mothers. You know, we have sons and daughters that could potentially be called to duty for something, right? Now, as of right now, there's no actual draft, right? Period. End of story. But that's right now. Major boy, go lay down. Sorry, my dog's walking around here. Anyhow, there's no actual draft right now. So I would say right out the gate, you probably shouldn't be too concerned. But in the meantime, we know that this is an evolving situation overseas and that things are kind of changing. So we're going to go through some articles that I have here, and I'm going to give you the full story from top to bottom. And then at the end, we'll get into the comments and maybe do a Q&A if there's any of you here and answer some questions that you guys might have. But let's start out. First off, I'm just going to do a screen share here. And bear with me because this whole streaming live thing, I'm pretty much one of the worst millennials ever when it comes to technology. So we'll do our best. All right. So this here is from thehivelaw.com, which I found to be, pretty interesting. They kind of break this down into a couple different categories. And the most interesting to me was, what are the chances of getting drafted into the military? So come down here. Statistics for getting drafted into the military. The chance of a male age 18 to 25 being drafted last year was 0.08. Female 18 to 25 last year, 0.04. For a world war, men have an 11.7 chance of getting drafted. In 2018, only 4,400 of military-age men were drafted. So even though that there's a recent article out there where I remember seeing, celebrating 50 years of the draft being over, just look, 2018, 4,400 men were drafted. So as much as it's over and as much as, the White House or whoever says that it's not a thing, it could very much so be a thing. And it's something that we need to talk about. And I mean, I've recently made some I made a couple shorts, kind of like harping on Gen Z about them getting drafted. And it got way more views than I thought it would get. And it's gotten a lot of comments. And I think that's probably the whole reason I'm doing this video. Um, there's a lot of concerned people out there, and I'm poking fun. And at the same time, I'm like, you know what? That's not really cool. I need to actually inform everybody, inform myself too. So we're learning together here. Anyways, I want to keep going. In the US, the Vietnam War drafted 1.8 million people. In the US, World War II drafted 10 million people. The total number of men available for the draft pool last year was 16.2 million. And that's obviously males aged from 18 to 25, I believe. So there are currently 31.6 million military age males in the US. I have no idea when this article was actually released, so I can't say, it's not really an article. So it doesn't have a date aligned with it. But we're going to go ahead and keep scrolling down here. So this is the part that I think everyone needs to keep in mind. This is pretty important here. And that's if, you always are looking at things as if they're true or not, right? But this is the Hive Law's perspective. And to a point, I'd say it's somewhat comforting. And to another point, if things escalate, it could be somewhat concerning. So for a world war, an average of 11.07 of the military age men were drafted. For a normal war, the draft should not need to get implemented. And a normal war is like our engagements that we had overseas with, Afghanistan. Like these smaller conflicts, like in an isolated country. Like we don't have multiple countries, getting involved, and it's not a multiple front war. So your chances of getting drafted are very low. It's a no-brainer. Only men ages 18 to 25 are able to get drafted. There was a draft in 2018 of 4,400 civilians. Kind of covered that already. So these civilians were drafted and deployed. In 2018, the population of men ages 18 to 25 was 16 million. So only 0.028% of men ages 18 to 25 got drafted in 2018. So here's the part where we need to look into this a little bit deeper. I found this part to be pretty interesting. So World War II, 20% of the men 18 to 25 were drafted. Vietnam 9.96, Afghanistan 4.40, and Iraq 6.07. There was not a draft in the war in Afghanistan. There was not a draft in the Iraq war. Well, what are these then? So we have some discrepancies in this site, right, for the information. So honestly, one person to another, if you are looking up these type of facts, look for discrepancies, because I don't believe freaking anything that I read. It's all just pieces of information that I store in my mind. I corroborate when I see a pattern. And if I see multiple patterns, then I reluctantly suppose that they could be true. But could be. Emphasis on could be. Anyhow, for our current population, 6% would be 1.9 million soldiers needed, right? But our current military size is 1.3 million. And I think that is about correct. That's what I've been saying. 1.3 million is 4.1% of our current population of military-aged men. We can assume that anything past 1.3 million in the military population that would require a draft, if we went into World War, those average 15.2%, 4.8 million of us 18 to 25 of the population would be drafted. So World War I, 10%, World War II, 20%, 4.8 million total military population is 3.5 more than our current military population. So 3.5 million people would get drafted of our population as it stands right now. Now, we're going to move forward, I think I'm going to stop this probably here, because if you go to the selectiveservice.gov, which is not ss.gov because that sounds a little bit too Nazi, it's actually three S's, sss.gov, is where they have the Q&A for all the frequently asked questions. And if you are someone that's concerned in this, that's where you should go. I'm going to go here next. I'm going to show you guys what I found. There are some, they've actually done very well as far as, answering questions that anyone would ask. I was actually pretty impressed. But that means 11.07 our military age men would get drafted. Read more at U.S. military deaths. Well, that sounds pessimistic. All right, let's go here and remove this. And so I took some screenshots, and we're just going to kind of go through those. I'm going to go through each facet of sss.gov and their frequently asked questions page, which you all are free to go to. But I am trying to provide somewhat of a complete guide here for you guys. Like, you guys come here and watch this video. I'm going to go through the main topics, the main questions, the ones that I think would meet most people, and get you guys to a point where, you at least feel a little bit better about what's going on, and answer the questions that, you're probably concerned about. Even though I harp on the Gen Z guys, if you are frantically worried right now about a draft and you are ages 18 to 25, I mean, put yourself in those people's shoes. Like, even though they're Gen Z and we harp on them because, we look at them as that they're kind of soft, that is some scary shit, dude. That's some scary shit. And not all Gen Z guys are soft. There's some of them that were raised right. There's some of them that their dads have taken the time to take them out to the woods, teach them hunting, teach them essential life skills, surviving. And either way, I don't care what, who your parents are and how they raised you. That's a scary endeavor to have to think about, right? So there's a quote from Fight Club that I always, remember, and it's like, we have no Great Depression, we have no Great War, we are the middle children of history, we're lost. And we are like coming full circle on a point in history where we have a Great Depression coming. It feels like, with, the prices of stuff going crazy and it hurting everyone's pocketbooks. And we have what appears to be a great war coming. And as much as that is, downplayed, and even myself will downplay it. I've been looking at some specific points where these articles are written to put information out, and the military and the government, the White House, will issue these orders for, making sure that our citizens are safe in these foreign countries right now that are in a hotbed of action. And it's like, you don't do that 4 days after a incursion or an terrorist attack unless you are severely worried, right? 4 days. October 7th was the day that this whole Hamas thing kicked off, and 4 days later is when that warning was issued. So as it relates to the draft, I feel like this is obviously a topic that needs to be discussed. And I feel like things are going to go hot. I feel like most people are. That's why this is a search term, across YouTube, across Google, is, you can do it yourself. Go and type in draft and see what comes up. A lot of young men and women are typing this stuff in, and they're worried. And so anyhow, let's just continue on and get into this. Let's see, where is it? First screenshot I got here. All right, so this is from the Military Times. They have a certain excerpt that they're talking of here, and I didn't read it. but there was a specific line that I thought was important to read from, and so that's what I'm doing now. The essay, entitled "A Call to Action: Lessons from Ukraine for the Future Force," highlights military lessons from the ongoing Russian invasion of Ukraine. It's also cited in the Mises Institute article. The part that's highlighted says Biden set to bring back the draft for war with Russia or China, wrote one Facebook user who shared a video that included screenshots of the parameters essay. I have no idea what the parameters essay is, so I'm not going to speak to it. But there's no plans to bring back mandatory conscription in the U.S. military, officials confirmed this week. And from what I can tell from everything else out there, that's true right now. There's no plans to bring back military conscription as of right now. But we have to think of this thing. The article is only talking about Ukraine, first of all. So now we're in a two-stage war, potentially, right? I mean, we're actively firing missiles. We have two battle groups from the Navy staged over there, and we're like there for the bad actors, right? So everyone kind of feels like, hey, this thing's going hot, man. Everyone can kind of see how this can go sideways. So people are concerned about there being a draft, even though the talk of a draft right now is basically, for what's written, is that it's not a thing, it's not going to happen. But at the same time, in my last video about the draft that I did a couple of days ago, we talked about the numbers, how they're down. So 1.2 million is the number of people that are actively enrolled in military across all the branches. Army's down 15,000 for the recruitment. You keep going down the line, and it's like 7,000 for Navy, 8,000 for, whatever. I'm roughly quoting these numbers, but it's like altogether, I think, let's say at most 40,000 down in recruitment numbers. So that ratio compared to 1.2 million is, to me, a drop in a bucket. It's not very large. But the question to ask is this a, I don't know, is this a larger thing that will keep growing, right? Especially when we have the question of, why are we even engaged in these wars? Like, why are we in Ukraine, right? To me, I completely disagree with the war in Ukraine as far as our involvement. Do I feel like the Ukraine should stand up to Russia for invading? Absolutely. Yeah. I don't really understand. I guess I do to a point. Russia sees Ukraine as a piece of its territory, and they, throughout history, made divide. There used to be countries that I used to do reports on countries back in grade school that don't even exist anymore, right? Yugoslavia, for instance, like that. Good luck looking up that country. It doesn't exist anymore. So that's a side note, but there are countries that look at smaller countries that have been separated with them over time, and they feel like they still have some type of ownership to them. And with Ukraine specifically, the rules were basically like, hey, United States and NATO, don't encroach on my territory. And we kept on encroaching, and we kept on encroaching. And the president happens to have a son with an oil company who's doing dirty work there. And everyone is like, man, we stand with Ukraine. And what you don't understand is, like, there is no good guy in that situation. Ukraine is not the good guy. They are corrupt. They have their own problems. They're only the good guy in the terms that they were invaded first. They didn't throw the first stone. There was no shot across the bow from them. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, keep an open mind to these situations as they develop. Because even with Israel and the whole Hamas thing, like, we're backing an ally, which we should do. But this is not our war. This is not something that I would want to go send my son or daughter to go die for, right? Anyhow, these are my personal opinions I'm sharing with you guys. I'm also trying to inform you on actual facts. So discount my personal opinions, but these are the facts as they are written online. Let's go on to the next screenshot. Okay, so this is straight from selectiveservice.com. I'm not sure what the third S stands for, maybe special. Why aren't women required to register? The Military Selective Service Act, as it's written, only authorizes the registration of male persons. In order for the Selective Service to be authorized to register women, Congress would have to pass legislation amending the current law. So, I mean, that brings up a conversation, does it not? Like the whole line between man and woman and people being able to define what it is. I'm not ready to go there tonight. Not me. I know what a man and woman is. Whatever they decide to do as far as the selective service, I made jokes about this in one of the shorts that I made. I mean, that's entirely up to them what they do. But I do think that they are looking for a testosterone based individual because we make the best fighting warriors, right? Okay, let's keep going on. All right. What is selective service registration? Registration is a way our government keeps a list of names of men from which to draw in case of a national emergency requiring rapid expansion of our armed forces. By registering all young men, selective service ensures that a future draft will be fair and equitable. So, fair and equitable. Let's talk about that. So, we can already discount that there's not going to be any women involved in that draft. So that sounds pretty equitable to me, does it not? Right? Guess I'll start that and end that one there. All right. Why do we need selective service if there may never be another draft? And like I said, I was just reading an article the other day. I think I actually showed it. Either posted about it or I showed it in my last video about the draft, that they were celebrating 50 years that the draft was over. And so then you have this question here. America's leaders agree that despite the success of all volunteer force, registration with selective service must continue as a key component of national security strategy. As President Clinton informed Congress in 1994, maintaining the selective service system and a draft registration provides a hedge against unforeseen threats and a relatively low cost insurance policy against our underestimating the maximum level of threat we expect our armed forces to face. So when I read that kind of makes me think, basically, when we engage in a multi-front war, right, with multiple countries, that on top of the exchange of troops that we're going to have to exchange out to refresh, we're going to be taking casualties. So what he's saying there is that if there was an event where we have a multi-stage war and we're exchanging troops on the same schedule that the military works on, whatever that is, but we're taking massive casualties, then that's where the draft comes into play. So if, something were to kick off and we start taking massive casualties, you can expect the fact that there is no draft right now to completely change. And an interesting note to that is that a lot of the comments I've been getting on these shorts that I made is that, Gen Z, being the age of the draft, is not ready for it just because of how people view them as being soft. If you go through boot camp, they're going to make you tough, is what we assume. But they don't have the drive, they don't have the love for America, maybe like we were when we were growing up, right? I mean, like when I grew up, it was like movies like the 4th of July. Like literally the year I was born, Top Gun came out. It's my favorite freaking movie. That's why I'm trying to look like Rooster, right? But there was like a large large sense of nationalism and patriotism. And since I've been alive, in these short 30 some odd years, things have completely warped into like all these reasons why you should hate this country. And we're not perfect, man. We suck in a lot of ways. Like we have gotten our hands dirty with stuff that we shouldn't have been into. And there are some massive mistakes that we made. But at the same time, I feel like I still love this country. So anyhow, another sidebar there. Okay, keep going here. So why do we need selective service if there may never be another draft? Um, oh no, we already did that one. We're moving on to the next one. Okay, so as far as exemptions go, and when you guys go to this site, if you're here watching this video, you're probably going to do that anyways. They break it down, as you can see on top, as far as the categories go. It's very well done, like I said. But if you're here, I'm just going to cover the things that I saw that to be the most important. So, um, exemptions. I'm religiously, morally opposed to war. Do I still need to register? Yes. Men who are religiously or morally opposed to participating in war as a conscientious objector must still register with the selective service system. Men cannot pre-classify as a conscientious objector. In the event of a draft, men who are called for induction would be able to submit a claim for conscientious objector classification. That reminds me of that movie Hacksaw. It was at Hacksaw Ridge, where you had the guy who was a conscientious objector ended up like saving multiple people. I at this point would not discount anyone who was trying to dodge the draft for what I mean. At this point, the date is October 28th, 2023. And at this point, you know, they haven't played the narrative enough and there hasn't been an action to where we can actually like bring ourselves into this war. So if you wanted to label yourself as a conscientious objector, that's a really hard word to say. I mean, I wouldn't blame you. I really wouldn't blame you. And like for the guys that are 18 and 26 right now, it totally makes sense why you guys are shitting your pants for multiple reasons. Like I don't have a dog in this fight. But also you don't have like the patriotism that us older generations had growing up, right? Like during my lifetime, like I said, there's been this whole breakdown of culture and society. And I don't know what really is to blame on it per se. I mean, there's this woke culture. I know that the catalyst for all this was probably the pandemic, right? It just skewed off so many different things and things went awry um, within our empire. At the same time, too, if you do any study of an empire over 250 years to 500-year period, they go through moments like this and they either make it through or they don't. So, anyways, that being said, let's move on to the next one. So as far as religious or nope, that's the one we just did too, I think. Yep. Okay, so this one is touching on the transgender stuff. I'm gonna have to actually bring this up on another page over here, but in one of the videos, I was actually poking fun on like 3 ways to dodge the draft and um, how you could basically dodge it. And I was joking around on like, yeah, what if you just, change your gender back and forth multiple times because you'll be, a third type of human that doesn't check a box on an intake form. Honestly, I don't have any problem with transgender people, gay people. I mean, this is America. You can do whatever you want as long as you're not infringing on the life, liberty, and happiness of anyone else, like that's completely fine by me. So, but I thought I would cover this still. So I'm a transgender, non-binary person. Am I required to register? Selective service bases the registration requirement on gender assigned at birth and not on gender identity or gender reassignment. So right there, the military is basically coming out and saying like that they don't recognize um, that whole thing that's going on. And you know, to me, I equate that to the woke culture, right? So they're not recognizing it, and their intake for military functions are going to be based upon what your birth certificate says. So as long as birth certificates are still made in the way they are um, when I was born and right now, that's how you're labeled, no matter who you are. Individuals who are born male and change their gender to female are still required to register. Individuals who are born female and change their gender to male are not required to register. So, I mean, that right there is also pretty interesting. Um, there's a lot to be said about changing your gender and what it does to your body. And if you go back to the beginning of what I said, is the military is looking for testosterone based persons, right? So if you change your gender to male, let's go back. Let me just look that up again. So individuals who are born male and change their gender to female are still required to register. Individuals who are born female and change their gender to male are not required to register. So to me, there's obviously probably going to be some gray area in the middle of that, but what they're saying is that for the most part, they're probably counting on the fact that you made it through puberty, like some Olympic swimmers or some professional swimmers have, with a male genealogy, right? And that you are physiologically male, right? So those that go the other way doesn't count. Whatever. Um, keep reading the rest of this. In the event of, actually, let's start up here. The legal authority based on Military Selective Service Act, MSSA, which does not address gender, identify, or transgender persons. In addition, Presidential Proclamation 47701 refers to males, quote unquote males, who are quote unquote born on or after January 1, 1960. Thus, Selective Service interprets the MSSA as applying to gender at birth because Congress did not contemplate transgender persons or a person's gender identity when it requires on quote unquote males to register when the Selective Training and Service Act of 1940 was passed and amended by the Selective Service Act of 1948 to create the Selective Service System. So they're basically saying, like, yeah, we had no freaking idea that people would have the ability to change their gender by one, saying so, and by two, doing so through some type of anabolic therapy or whatever the hell you call it. Until Congress amends the MSSA or passes a separate law addressing transsexuals and gender identity, Selective Service must follow the intent of Congress when required only males to register. The registration requirement is based on gender at birth, period, end the story. That's where it ends. In the event of a resumption of the draft, individuals born male who have changed their gender to female can file a claim for an exemption from military service if they receive an order to report for examination or introduction. Okay, well, that one is hot and heavy and rife with just all kinds of comments probably down below. I mean, like I said, I don't have a problem with it personally. I have people in my family that are gay. I actually don't know anyone that's transsexual, but I mean, if my own kids decided to go and do that, I would be I'd be feeling like I probably messed up somewhere along the way, but if that's just who they are and what they want to do, I mean, I'm not a guy that's gonna outcast them. Um, that's just not who I am, and that's it. So the military here, you look at it like a business. They're looking for one type of individual, born male. Period. End of story. Doesn't matter what you decided to do, except if you are born male and you decide to change your gender to female, they're at least giving you a route to go through. And the way I see it as is if you're that person right now that I'm talking to, you're probably going to be okay. I mean, things would have to get extremely, extremely bad as far as casualties and exchange rates of soldiers, and probably all the fronts of war that we are working on is my guess. So you'll probably be fine. Anyways, let's keep moving on. Okay. Are undocumented males required to register? So this is completely freaking shocking to me. Completely freaking shocking because everything that I've heard up until this point, and I haven't like been doing a super deep dive, but I've been doing some, some basic looking around about the draft and like listening to videos about it, which is not fact, right? But from my knowledge to this point is that if you are undocumented immigrant, then you cannot be drafted. This tells me otherwise, but it's worded in a very confusing way. So, yes, all undocumented males 18 through 25 years of age, other than those admitted on non immigrant visas, must register, whether or not they have a green card. So, excuse me while I going down through here through the Q&A on the other page that I'm looking at. So that's who needs to register. There's another question that comes up next that's tied to this. And it's, to be completely honest, the whole reason I have like um I guess this interest into like why the hell our border is open. And I always assume that I'm dumb and that I must be missing something and it must be some larger reason why we would do this right now. I mean, for the pure fact that it brings up so many potential threats um, to us as a nation, right? Like, pretend you're the National Security Agency and you know this is going on and we're letting all these people through. There must be some benefit to having that border open and bringing people in. So to me, I'm like, well, what is the benefit? Do they know that something is coming? So as far as, everyone's been talking about like, well, if there was a war, those guys would get drafted. And there's a large group saying, no, they wouldn't. So this comment right here, yes, all undocumented males 18 through 25 years of age, comma, other than those admitted on non-immigrant visas, must register. So the exception is if you have a non-immigrant visa. Now, that's the next thing that I'm really going to dig into because if there's any news out there that all these quote unquote military age males coming through the border have been issued non-immigrant visas, if a visa at all, I would like to know something like that because that's what it has to do with. Let's go back to the next screenshot that I got here. What is the penalty for not registering? Okay, so as far as I know it, and I've heard everything online, it's like 5 years in jail, man. Quarter million, 5 years in jail. Failure to register with selective service is a violation of Military Selective Service Act. Conviction for such violation may result in imprisonment for up to 5 years and or a fine of not more than 250,000. So up to 250,000, and it's going to be one or the other or possibly both. Now, I had a comment. Actually, no, I don't think it was a comment. I think it was another video I was watching. All the things blend together, basically. But someone said, like, what's the difference, right? So, what's the difference between spending 5 years in jail and having a massive like you went to college type of debt versus joining a war that you have no dog in that fight, right? Like you don't have any will to be there. You stand against everything it's for. Like me, if I got drafted, I can't say that I would stand against everything that it's for. Like I think I see the larger picture for why we're there, depending what it is, right? And I innately have this national pride. I love America. I'm grateful that I live here. I was very lucky to be born here. We are very blessed to live here, man. Like super blessed. Anyone in the military who's been deployed is going to tell you that when they've seen how third world countries live. It's not some exaggeration. It's a no-brainer, right? So if I were to get drafted, which the likelihood of that is very low, but it's a possibility. I would, even if I was against the reason why we were there, it always comes down to like you're fighting for the guy on the right and the left of you. So, and I'm trying to make it back home to my kids and my wife, and I want America to succeed through, even if it's a bullshit endeavor, right? So there's that too. But if you take an individual who has like no dog in the fight and doesn't want to be there, they're not going to make a very good soldier. And at the same time, not every soldier needs to hold an M4 and go fight a war on the front lines. Like we're going to need people to do every type of job. Go back to World War II and look at, how women were taking into that workforce as far as the military goes, building planes, ammunition. There was so many different jobs available that to think right off the bat that you're going to be a frontline guy is kind of absurd, to be honest. Like the military has jobs for anybody, but what's the difference? Well, I guess it's the possibility of an illusion of freedom, right? If you're sitting in the can getting 3 square meals a day, in a warm or conditioned space, you're in prison though. Like, and think about all the prison games. Like you guys have watched was it not Jack Ryan? I can't remember what it is, but like the military BS that goes on, those games, those alpha male games that goes on inside a prison. Yeah, dude, I don't want to be playing that shit. If it's up to me, I want to be with my brothers, and if I'm fighting some bullshit war for some, I would rather be doing that. Like put my freedom in my own hands with an M4 and some MREs amongst a bunch of other guys who are, who maybe don't want to be there either, but we're there together. I want to be with those guys. That's me. So what's the difference? There it is. It's your perspective on freedom. I guess we'll go to the next one here. Transgenders, undocumented, we covered penalties, and who is exempt from registration. So there are a few cases when a man is exempt from registration requirement. Men who are exempt do not have a selective service registration number and are in compliance with federal law. So I'm assuming that means you have any warrants out for your arrest, you haven't gotten any trouble. The few individuals who are exempt from this requirement are those on current non-immigrant visas. So once again, that's a circle back to that non-immigrant exemption status that we listed above. The complete list of acceptable documentation for exemptions may be found below. I wasn't going to take a screenshot of that, but I decided not to, basically because of the fact that when I clicked it, it was a basic table of identifications that you could submit to them for your paperwork for not why you should be exempt, but just who you are. That's it. They're definitely not trying to give you any help as far as like, oh, it might be this reason, it might be that reason. So it doesn't, it doesn't surprise me, but there it is. So as far as exemptions go, we don't really know what they are. Conscientious objector, your immigration status could obviously bar you right out the gate. And I didn't cover some other stuff too, but there is like firstborn sons, only sons, that would be potentially exempt too. So I'm going to do a screen share here and also come into another site that I think I'm going to leave you guys with to look up. But it is, let's see, let's remove that. Bear with me, guys. Stop screen. Not very good at this live stuff and sharing screens. Like I said, probably the worst millennial ever. Everything you need to know. There it is. Boom. Yeah. Excuse all this wood chips. I was out here trying to get the chicken coop ready for winter, and it like hit suddenly. Okay. So, yep, you guys can all see this. All right, cool. So this is military.com/join/armed forces. Everything you need to know about military selective service. So this is a pretty good resource from what I can tell. This answers all the questions, and it does it in like a, fifth grade level per se. So we've kind of already covered what the draft is, why you have to register, but there is, I want to touch on this too. So once again, what if you don't register for the draft? Legally, you could be in a lot of trouble if you don't register. It's a felony. However, no one has been prosecuted for the crime since 1986. And based off that High of Law page, and I want to call it an article, that there has been drafts since 1986. So more than likely, there has been people who have dodged or evaded those drafts, and there has been no legal action, at least according to this article, against them. Now, if we find ourselves, those are all quote unquote normal wars, as stated by sss.gov. World wars, I'm assuming, I don't know what number it is, where it's going to be like, 3, 4, 5, 6 countries involved makes it a world war. Don't know. But for world wars, they treat it differently. So then if you apply for any government benefits at the time, or so if you fail to register for the draft by the time you turn 26, you are no longer able to do so. Then if you apply for any government benefits at any time after that, you quit, you quite possibly will be denied. No student aid, government job, etc. So I know the FAFSA is pretty much directly tied to the selective service. I remember when I went through, let's see, change this around here. When I went through community college, which was like just a pure joke, and was trying to join the military at the time, everyone in my family was like, dude, don't just enlist, go, officer. So I tried basically doing ROTC when I was hella old at the time. I was like 23. And there I was with these, 18, 19-year-old cadets at an actual college. Well, I was going to like a community college. And I remember on the financial aid form, it telling me that I had to register for the selective service to be able to receive the financial aid from my school. And it was closely tied together. And at the time I was like, well, yeah, screw it, whatever. That's what I'm trying to do. So that seems like an obvious requirement. If you're going to receive any financial benefits from the United States, they're going to want something back from you in a possibility payment, right? A probability payment of, if we get into some shit, you're gonna pay up one way or another. So, all right. So I have basically gone through my whole list of screenshots here. I hope that this was a pretty good guide for you guys. If you guys took any value from this, go ahead and hit subscribe down below. Like the video; it helps it get out to more people. If this affects anyone that you know that's concerned about this, whether it be a son or daughter or a father or a mother, go ahead and hit the share button, send it out to them. Hopefully this will be a semi-quick thing. I'm not sure how deep we are into this, but let's drop into the Q&A section of this for as far as the comments go. So it looks like there's 5 people here right now, so thank you 5 people for being here. I'm gonna go up to the top of the chat. Kill It and Grill It is here from Nebraska. Penny Pinching Prepper is here, who's one of my good friends. L is a family member of mine. So we have these people in the chat. If anyone else has any questions, feel free to drop it here. If I have the answers, I'll try to answer it. Otherwise, I'll just give my opinion. So, which is not worth much. So we'll start with penny pinching. I'm only 46 and I had to register for the draft when I turned 18. Always thought the draft was there. They just weren't pulling from it. I mean, that seems to be pretty much true. Like, I did the whole selective service thing. I entered my name into it. I didn't think they were pulling from it either, but apparently they did. 4,400 people in 2018 that they pulled, because we were low then. And now the concerning factor is that they've activated the National Guard, right? So, or is it the reserves? I don't know. But they've activated a secondary military group that's a accessory to our main force. So when they do that, I mean, it's a no-brainer as to why they're doing that. It's because they don't have enough personnel. Otherwise, why the hell would they do that? So if they're doing that, it's a sign that the draft could potentially be a reality. Not now, maybe not in 2 years, maybe not in 3 years. But when they do that, to me, it kind of hints to the fact that if you pair that with the fact that they're issuing these no travel orders 4 days after a terrorist attack, right? And like, make no mistake, that was a terrorist attack, the way that they did it. But I mean, there's multiple terrorist attacks that go on all the time, all over the world. This one seems to be one that's on our allies, and it was significant. We're talking, over 1,000 people were affected by it. So I don't know where they draw the line, if it's a numbers game on that. But when you take that no travel order and then you take the mobilization of where people are coming in to back up our troops, or exist in the area, like these naval battle groups, multiple ones. So we had China that came in too. That's concerning. It seems like it has the recipe for it potentially kicking off. Is all I'm trying to say. So, yeah, dude, it's a potentiality that the draft could be reenacted, especially that knowing that our numbers aren't where they should be right now. We're 30,000 down for our recruitment, and depending on, I feel like, what happens with this war, all it's going to take is for the media to highlight a certain attack on Americans in some form or fashion. And that will basically, get the American people on board. Plain and simple, man. It's the same thing that happened back in 2001. There's no person in their right mind back then that wouldn't have gotten on board, But the way they skewed it and where they took it from there was, looking back now, is like, Well, that's kind of questionable, especially given the fact that like we never found any weapons of mass destruction, right? So like what were our real intentions of going in there? Anyhow, let's keep going on. Amanda Williams is here. Hello from Alabama. I missed the first part of the live stream. What does the Selective Service say about drafting males versus females? So I think we covered that early on, but because I have the ability, even though I'm not very good at it, share a screen with you guys, and we can just go back and read you exactly what it says off of the Selective Service website. So let me do this here for you. I'll show you exactly what it says, because if I try to say it in my own words, I'm going to screw up. All right, bear with me, guys. Frequently asked questions. All right, so you guys should be able to see this. General questions. Here we go. Let me just make sure. Yep. All right. All right. All right. So, oh wait, that's okay. So yeah, why aren't women required to register? The Military Service Act, as it's written, only authorizes the registration of male persons. In order for the Selective Service to be authorized to register women, Congress would have to pass legislation amending the current law. Didn't click this. Let's see what this says. Selective Service laws is written out. Male persons stating who must register. So that there was a whole transgender portion, and if you're a transgender male and you were born biologically male, then they basically don't care how you identify now. If you are a biological female and are transgendered to male, they still see you as a female, and they only want males. So it doesn't matter how you identify. It is whatever is written on your birth certificate. And whatever the reasons for that, I mean, we probably don't have to guess too far, right? Like if you look on like body mass index for, what a male can put on versus a woman, it just seems like that's probably why. That's probably why. Like I said earlier, there's jobs for all of us in the military. Someone I was talking to the other day in the comments said they're not going to draft Gen Z. It's going to be 30 to 50-year-olds because they know that Gen Z's not going to be able to do it. And I found that to be super interesting because I was like, there's no way they're going to do that. But this guy's point was pretty interesting. And it's because if you look at the demographic between 30 and 50-year-olds, 50-year-olds basically puts you in Gen X, and 30-year-olds would put you in Generation Y, the millennials, right? So he defined it as we are the enemy, the 30 to 50-year-olds, because of generally for the demographic of what their core beliefs are. Like we are pro-America, nationalists. We would make automatically a better soldier doing whatever, even mopping the floors because of our belief system. So that being said, I found it a little absurd, but at the same time, I was like, man, they could do it. They could. If things got bad enough, I wouldn't discount the fact that they wouldn't do it. They probably would, potentially. Anyways, oh, Papa's Farm is here. Oh crap. Nice, dude. I actually saw you in here. Going okay, Penny, as good as it's gonna be under the tyranny. Yep. Oh, Amanda has 4 daughters and 1 son between the ages of 19 and 26. So yeah, your whole family, with the exception of your daughter, is right in that draft zone, 100%. And man, my heart goes out to you because I can only imagine what you're feeling right now. So yeah, for how things are right now. Like I keep on like dating this video. This is October 28th, right? Um, if something were to happen here, and like this, just to share with you guys, like I had this crazy freaking dream, and it was probably like 7 months ago. I had this dream where I was my son, like I was him, and I was young. I was like maybe 18 or 19 years old, and I was in Montana. I was in Billings, Montana, and I was there with his girlfriend, but it was like, my girlfriend. And we were looking at this memorial where we had gotten attacked. And he was there, looking at all of it. And then he went back to the airport. I was getting ready to leave. It was either an airport or a bus station. And he was looking up at the screens, but I'm like seeing everything through his eyes. And I knew that I was my son in the dream. And the news was showing that we were getting attacked again. Right. So I bring this up like right now, as of October 28th, 2023. If I were you, Amanda, I would be like, yeah, F this war. If there was a draft, I don't want to be sending my kids to this. But if they're going to do like a quote unquote Fantastic Freddy, which you might not know what that is, but if they were to skew our perceptions to try to get us on board through an act that was either premeditated by our own government or an actual act by another foreign government, like an attack, to get us on board with this war, it would get me on board if it seems legit. And they're going to make it seem super legit. I mean, that's what they're going to do. It's a psyop, basically, is what it would be if it was something done or allowed, right? And right now, this is not our war, and everyone's like just kind of watching from the sidelines. But eventually, I'm telling you, there's going to be a point where they're going to try to get us on board, is all I'm going to say. They're going to try to get us on board through one way or another. It's going to happen, period. End of story. And like, there's not enough, I don't know what the word is. There's not enough love in our hearts right now. I mean, if you look at the Ukraine war with Russia, a bunch of Americans went over there because of the compassion. That's the word I'm looking for. The compassion in their hearts for wanting to go fight for them. And you know what? God bless them if that's what they wanted to do. There's not enough compassion, I feel like, in our hearts with the Ukraine war with Russia now anymore. You know, we've already played that game out once. And so now they need something. They need an actual attack here, whether it be domestic terrorism or an outright, attack on maybe one of the battle groups or something that's out there. I mark my words, guaranteed, if this thing starts to escalate, we're going to have one. We're going to have something here for the American people to get on board. So we'll have to wait and see what that is. And God forbid it's premeditated by our own, by our own government to try to get us on board. But I wouldn't put it past them for a second. That's my thoughts. Papa's Farm would have been here sooner, just got off Ghost Live. Papa, I'm glad to see you, man. We're probably going to end this thing here. I feel like I've gone through and answered a bunch of questions. We've covered top to bottom. Will I be drafted? If you are a military aged male that would possibly be considered for the draft, 18 to 26, I've answered all the questions that I can here. With the exception of like the first son or only male. I didn't answer that, but guys, go look this stuff up, dude. It's all over the internet. I covered I feel like the outliner questions and undocumented immigrants. We have another question that's going to be floating on there for their status. That's going to be the next thing I look up. Whether or not I make a video for it, who's to say? I mean, if I end up finding out that the immigrant status of all these people coming across the border are listed as A rather than B, and A is non-draft personnel versus B being draft personnel. If it's that they're actually exempt from the draft, I probably won't cover it because I won't be surprised. If they are applicable to a draft, I'll probably cover it because that's like the first thing that comes across anyone's mind, right? Is that if we did get into some shit, yeah, all these people that are here, that are newly here, that want to be Americans, should sign up just like the rest of us, you know, that our ancestry goes back for forever on. All right, guys. Well, let's end it here. I appreciate you guys stopping in. Like, subscribe, share it to anyone that you feel like could possibly benefit from this information, and we will catch you next time. I appreciate you guys coming in. Purple Rain's out.